Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth. Mythology helped shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed. Of all the many, many monsters and fabulous beasts of legend, perhaps none are as popular, recognizable, and iconic as the dragon. Dragons are found within the mythology and folklore of every single culture on the planet, and dominate within the fantasy genre of storytelling in the modern age. They may be seen as ravenous and greedy fiends, downright evil creatures that lay waste to all that they see before them. But they may also be seen as benevolent gods, protectors of humanity and the natural and spiritual worlds. And sometimes, they are little more than animals, existing at the top of the food chain and dominating an environment. This program will showcase a select handful of the legendary dragons of mythology and folklore. Our first dragon comes from Japanese mythology, Ryu Jin, the god of the sea and the bringer of rain and thunder. As with other Japanese dragons, or Ryu, Ryu Jin has a long serpentine body, antler-like horns, scales like a koi fish, clawed hands and feet with 3 toes, and long tendrils that resemble facial hair. Legend says that Ryu Jin lived on the bottom of the ocean in a jewel-encrusted palace made of red and white coral, where each day spent there was 100 years in the human world. Fish, sea turtles, and jellyfish acted as his loyal servants, and from his deep-sea home, he controlled the ebb and flow of the tides with a magical set of jewels. Like many other sea gods throughout various mythologies, Ryu Jin was as temperamental as the deep waters, calm and generous one moment, wrathful and deadly the next. Nevertheless, Ryu Jin appears in numerous tales of Japanese mythology, both aiding and hindering humans who encounter him, and he was revered as the ancestor of all of Japan's emperors. In Chinese mythology, the dragon was called the Long, which had long symbolized imperial authority, and acts as the template for most other dragons found in various other East Asian cultures. The Long was depicted with a camel-like head adorned with stag-like horns, 4 legs, each with a 5-digit claw, and a long serpentine body covered in 117 carp-like scales, ending in a feathery tail. As with many dragons of Eastern traditions, the Chinese Long would often act more in a benevolent light than anything else, though it was still more than capable of dealing out righteous fury should they ever feel insulted. They were heavily associated with water, capable of bringing rain to agricultural settlements or purifying water sources. But they were also capable of creating violent storms, floods, and tidal waves. Dragons feature in many, many tales of Chinese mythology, from the thunder god Shenlong to the volcano dragon Fuzonglong, to the dragon who went on to be featured in the Chinese zodiac. But while dragons of the East were portrayed as benevolent and generous, most dragons of the West were destructive and violent, a stark contrast to their Asian cousins. Among the most iconic was the Wyvern of medieval Europe, a fire-breathing monstrosity with an appetite to match. The Wyvern had a distinctly reptilian appearance, sporting a massive set of bat-like wings, 2 powerful legs, and a whip-like tail ending in an arrowhead point. Among the most famous wyvern tales was the Dragon of Mortarford, where a baby wyvern was secretly raised by a young girl named Maud, who fed it milk and played with it in the forest. As the wyvern grew, it developed a taste for meat and began attacking forest creatures, local livestock, and then eventually, people. For years, the wyvern terrorized the area, attacking anyone that came near it, save for Maud, its only friend. But even Maud could not stop the wyvern's violent nature, and the dragon continued its rampage until it was stopped by a knight named Garstone. With its unique and easily recognizable appearance, the wyvern is among the most popular dragons ever imagined, appearing in countless myths and legends, upon coat of arms, and in many fantasy stories of both print and film alike. Dragons were always dangerous, whether they be benevolent or malevolent in nature, but arguably, none were as deadly as the Cockatrice. Appearing in medieval bestiaries and stories, the Cockatrice was a bizarre creature, resembling a small wyvern, but with the head of a rooster. What it lacks in size, it made up for in devastating power. Its breath was toxic, killing anything that it breathed on like a corrosive acid. When it would drink from a water source, the water would be forever poisoned. And what is worse is its gaze, said to kill anyone who would make eye contact with it, not unlike the basilisk or the Catoblepas from Roman mythology. As dangerous as the Cockatrice was, it was not without its share of weaknesses. It was said that one may combat the Cockatrice with the use of a mirror, turning its own power against it. Additionally, the Cockatrice's power had no effect on weasels, which were said to be used to kill the creature, and the wretched beast would die instantly upon hearing the sound of a rooster crowing. One of the largest dragons ever imagined was Jormungand of Norse mythology, one of several of Loki's beastly offspring. Also known as the Midgard Serpent, or the World Serpent, Jormungand was large enough to wrap itself around the whole of Midgard and put the end of its tail in its mouth, or even crush it in its coils. Jormungand was the archenemy of the thunder god Thor, with whom the serpent would have a number of close encounters and quick skirmishes. Among the most famous occasions, Thor went on a fishing trip with a giant named Hymir. After the pair rowed far out to sea, and they could no longer see the shore, Thor hurled a massive fishhook into the waters, baited with an ox's head. In no time at all, Jormungand was caught on the line and pulled from the depths. As Thor was about to deal the serpent a deadly blow, the frightened Hymir cut the line out of panic. Thor was enraged as Jormungand escaped back into the sea, their final duel to take place at the end of days in the Battle of Ragnarok, a fight that would ultimately claim the lives of both god and monster. Faun mythology from Benin tells of Edohuedo, a gigantic rainbow-colored dragon who carries the entirety of the earth in his coils. Similar in appearance to the rainbow serpents of Aboriginal Australian mythology, Edohuedo was the most loyal servant of the supreme god Nanabaluku, carrying him in his mouth as he traversed between the spirit and mortal worlds. It was said that the very earth was created by Nanabaluku with the aid of the great serpent, whose winding and writhing movements sculpted the land, creating hills and valleys and rivers. When the earth was completed, Edo coiled himself beneath in order to keep it steady, and his master created the seas in order to house and cool the mighty dragon. It is said that to this very day, Edo lives beneath the sea, holding the earth in his coils and his tail in his mouth. When the serpent shifts and adjusts, the earth trembles and quakes. A pair of monkeys live beneath the sea with him, and feed him iron bars every day. But it is said that one day, the monkeys will run out of iron, and Edo will abandon his post and let the earth fall. Greek mythology has more than a few dragons within its tales of heroes and monsters, and one of the most vicious was called Ladon. Born of the union of Typhon and Echidna, Ladon was immense in size, sometimes described as having up to 100 heads, each one filled with venom and uncontrollable rage. Ladon acted as the guardian of the Garden of the Hesperides, namely the sacred apples that grew there. Like many of its siblings, Ladon was killed after a battle with Hercules, who struck him with an envenomed arrow, and would go on to claim the golden apples with aid from the Titan Atlas. From English legend comes the story of the monstrous Lampton worm. As the story goes, this dragon began as a small eel-like creature that had got caught by the young ne'er-do-well John Lampton. Disgusted by his catch, Lampton threw the wretched creature down a well, but the worm did not die. Instead, it grew to an immense size and bore the appearance of a wingless serpentine dragon. While Lampton was away fighting in the Crusades, the dragon had escaped from the well and went on about satiating its appetite on whatever it could find. Livestock, fish, and game surrounding the area began to gradually and steadily dissipate, falling victim to the dragon's appetite. Any villager or traveler who encountered the beast would likewise meet the same grisly fate. In an effort to subvert the potential attacks on people and livestock, the village began to leave a daily offering to the worm, but no amount was ever enough for the beast. The worm grew larger and larger, devouring people and animals, destroying farms and houses, uprooting trees and more. Those who attempted to face the creature learned that it had the ability to heal rapidly and reattach body parts that had been lopped off by the stroke of a sword or an axe. The worm seemed unkillable, and the land would be doomed. That is, until the return of John Lampton, who faced the monster in a suit of armor coated in sharp blades and spikes. Bringing the fight to the middle of a strong river, John hacked and slashed at the monster, and its body parts drifted far down the river as they were hacked away. The Lampton worm's greatest asset was now nullified, and in a last-ditch effort to save itself, the dragon constricted itself around the knight, gripping him tightly in its coils. But alas, the spearheads and razor blades of John's armor pierced deep into the wretch's hide, killing it all the faster. The Lampton worm died within moments. The light left its eyes, and the dragon's corpse floated downriver in pieces. Dragons and dragon-like creatures are also found across the Atlantic Ocean, and in the stories of Native American peoples, such as the Pyasa of Illini mythology. Painted upon the cliffs above the Mississippi River in Alton, Illinois, the Pyasa is depicted as having a large scaly body, bat-like wings spanning 50 feet wide, talons like a bird of prey, a long fish-like tail, sharp antlers, a man-like face, and an appetite for human flesh. According to an account by John Russell of Shirley College, the Pyasa continuously wrought devastation to the indigenous people of the area, until it came face to face with Chief Watoga. As the story goes, Watoga acted as bait for the monster, luring it into an enclosed area surrounded by brush. When the dragon was mere feet away from the chief, he signaled an attack, and a clutch of hidden warriors sprang out and rained poison-tipped arrows down upon the Pyasa until it at last lay dead. Though Russell's account is hotly debated whether or not it was a true legend of the Alini people, or just a fantasy crafted by Russell, this story directly echoes the myths of dragons and dragon slayers of Europe, and the Pyasa itself remains an example of an American dragon. Our final dragon comes from the Epic of Beowolf, long debated by scholars to be the first, or at least most influential, depiction of a classic European dragon. Beowulf's dragon was massive and ancient, a gigantic reptilian beast with 4 limbs, bat-like wings, a tail that could demolish enemies with lightning-fast strikes, scorching fire breath as if from the pits of hell itself, and a penchant for treasure. In the story, an escaped slave took refuge in a cavern, soon discovering that the cave belonged to a dragon. The dragon was sound asleep atop a massive pile of treasure, no danger to anyone. That is, if the intruder was wise enough to leave before the dragon awoke. But the slave was tempted by the gold, despite his fear of the monster, and he reached out and snatched a golden cup from the vast hoard, and he quickly scampered away. When the dragon awoke, it instantly noticed a piece of his treasure had been taken, and it was filled with reptilian fury, and he unleashed fiery wrath down upon the kingdom of Beowulf. Though the king had grown old, he was ever the warrior, and sought to face the dragon in single combat and save his kingdom. But the might of the dragon was too great, shattering Beowulf's sword and dousing him with his fire breath. With the aid of his companion Wiglaf, Beowulf at last managed to slay the savage dragon before he succumbed to his injuries. Arguably no creature of legend was ever as famous, revered, and feared as the dragon, appearing in a vast array of cultures all across the world. Though they may bear similarities and a handful of unifying traits, no two dragons are exactly alike in either appearance or behavior. From savage monsters such as the Wyvern or Ladon, to wise and helpful beings such as the Lung or Edo, to bizarre anomalies such as the Cockatrice or the Pyasa. These few are but a handful of examples of a creature that has flown its way into the myths, stories, and imaginations of countless people throughout time. It could be argued that no other mythical creature has ever or will ever have the lasting impact of the mighty dragon.